Hello class. This week, just as I did with the literacy narrative, I'm going to introduce and explain our second assignment for this semester. This is the second of three that we will be discussing, and this is probably going to be the most difficult assignment of the semester. We are talking about the discourse community analysis. This is an essay that is much more academic in nature. It has a little bit more structure attached to it. Okay, and a lot of what we're going to be doing these next 5 weeks, these videos are going to become much more focused on the assignment and the concepts. In the literacy narrative, I did have a video where I talked a little bit about grammar and punctuation and that kind of thing. In these next few weeks, I'm really not going to be doing that. This week, I'm going to introduce the discourse community analysis. Next week, I'm going to do a follow-up video based on the reading that you are doing and Johns' piece about discourse communities and communities of practice, because I really want you to understand that specific reading because I know how dense it is. But let's get to the requirements of this particular essay. So, the requirements are similar in this way. The first draft of the essay is meant to be 2 to 3 pages. My hope is that you have a better idea of what I'm looking for in the first draft this time. Even though it is a first draft, I want to see that you put your best foot forward. I want to see the entire essay give me some sort of structure. I want to see your intro, some body paragraphs, a conclusion. Okay, the final draft, it's a little longer, but not too much. I'm asking for 5 to 6 pages, double-spaced, because the requirement is a little bit more this time because you're writing a more academic piece, and there are a lot of components that I need you to address. Okay? You are following MLA style as you have done for every assignment up to this point. 12-point Times New Roman font, a header in the left-hand corner, the title centered right underneath the header. Okay? The draft due dates. The first draft of this essay is going to be due on about 2 weeks. Sunday, October the 11th at 10 p.m. The first drafts, all the first drafts are worth approximately 3.5% of your grade, and that is about 10% total. So all 3 of these drafts, the better you do on the first drafts, the better that part of your grade is going to be. So you need to take this very seriously. A graded draft of this is going to be due on Sunday, October the 25th at 10 p.m., and this is going to be worth 20% of your overall grade. Okay, the purpose of this assignment is to help you more fully understand how discourse communities use language to function and accomplish their purposes and goals. Okay, now you may not have a full understanding of discourse communities as you are watching this video, but my recommendation is that you come back and watch this video multiple times so that you can read this purpose and read over this so that you understand what a discourse community is. Okay, fundamentally, in the description, this is telling you exactly what it is that you need to do. You need to compose an interesting description and insightful analysis of the language practices, spoken and written, of a discourse community of your own choosing. You, as the student, get to pick what discourse community you are writing about. You may write about your family, you may write about a job, you may write about your church. Obviously, COVID-19 is going to have an effect on what you can write about, but the hope is that you will be able to find a place, regardless, that will satisfy the requirements of this assignment. Okay? But whenever you get confused, understand that what you are being asked to do is to discuss the language practices of a given space. Okay, you are examining how language is being used. Some people lose focus on this assignment. Don't do that. Okay? As you get started, you need to identify a discourse community that interests or intrigues you. You may be an outsider to this community. Okay? For your purposes, a discourse community should be any group of people who identify themselves as a group. Again, these are some examples. You've got a church group, fraternity or sorority, a club, a team, social organization, professional organization, academic organization. Okay, and again, COVID-19 may affect your ability to view certain groups, but you should still be able to find some. Online discourse communities also counts. So there are examples that I can point to in future weeks. So, these are a list of questions. All right, so one of the issues that students had with the literacy narrative is that they tried to answer all of the questions in order as you see them. Don't do that in the discourse community essay. There are certainly times when you will try to answer the questions in your paper, but you will do that as a byproduct of the organization, not because you are consciously trying to answer the questions that you see in front of you. Okay, but you do want to try to think about the genres and the lexes and the goals especially. You are probably going to end up writing about all three of those things in your 5 to 6 page essay. Okay? And I do want to address this last question because you do need to do at least one interview for this essay. So part of what you are doing is who are the old-timers in the group with expertise? Who are the newcomers with less expertise? How do newcomers learn the appropriate language, genres, and knowledge of the group? Okay, as we get into the professional and the student examples over the course of these next couple weeks, my hope is that you are able to have a better idea of what a discourse is and how these essays do need to be organized. Okay, but if this is all a little bit confusing right now, again, that's why these videos exist as downloadable, viewable multiple times, because you should be coming back and watching them multiple times. Once you have identified a discourse community to study, you will need to engage in the following research activities. You need to observe and take detailed notes of members of the discourse community while they are engaged in a shared group activity. What are they doing? What kinds of things do they say? What do they write? Again, the focus is on how language is used. You need to collect anything that people in that community read or write. These are the genres: official publications, newsletters, blogs, forums, IMs, texts, those sorts of things, the ways that people communicate with one another. You need to interview at least one member of the discourse community. How long have you been involved in this group? Why are you involved? What you see in those parentheses are examples of some of the questions that you can ask. If you want to know how to interview people more, that is something that we can talk about on an individual basis. But it is a requirement. You must interview at least one other person. Okay, this is mandatory. If you don't do this, you are going to lose a lot of points on your paper. You need to interview at least one other person. And I understand that interviewing someone in these circumstances means that you may need to do it over email, you may need to do it over text message, or you may need to do it over Zoom, Skype, whatever is most appropriate. But you need to interview at least one person associated with the discourse community. These are some other questions under analyzing information that you should think about as you are starting to write your paper. But again, don't necessarily feel like you have to answer all of these questions in your essay. Okay? But talking about genres, talking about conflicts, talking about participants having difficulty, talking about authority, these are potentially interesting things that you could be talking about, especially authority. People who have authority in a discourse community can have a lot of power. Okay? We talked about authority with the literacy narrative and literacy sponsors. Okay? Authority is something really important. The people who have control have a lot of power over what information gets disseminated, how a discourse community functions, and even on how some of the language is used, whether it is acceptable or unacceptable. This essay, unlike the literacy narrative, has a little bit more of a strict format, and I want to go over this for you. Okay, there are 5 essential elements, and I want to see all 5 of these elements by the time you get to the final draft, and I want to see at least 4 of them on the first draft. Okay, the introduction, in this section you have 2 purposes. First, describe what a discourse community is in your own words. After having practiced with paraphrasing, this will be your second chance to show me how well you understand this skill. So your first paragraph should be describing what a discourse community is. Then you will describe your individual discourse community. The order in which you do this is up to you. Most people do that first, they describe the discourse community in general first. But it's very important that you note the introduction needs to be 2 paragraphs. Okay? Part of being a good college student is following instructions. Okay? The most important instruction that I'm going to give you this week is to make sure your introduction is 2 paragraphs long. If it is 1 paragraph long, you are not following directions and you are going to lose points. Okay? After you get done with the introduction, then you have the methodology section. Here, you will tell me who you intend to interview, the kinds of questions you'll ask, and what you hope to learn. In addition, you may illustrate some of the words you'll be defining. The methodology is your preview. This is where you are going to tell me exactly what is to come in the rest of your essay. Okay? You are not answering the questions. All right? You are telling me what you hope to learn through the interviews and through the words you're defining. In the observation section, this is going to be the longest portion of your essay. You will explain the lexes. You must tell me what you observed. Remember to emphasize the way language is used, not necessarily the actions or behavior. Finally, highlight the most important quotes your interviewees said in their interviews. Do not transcribe, paraphrase what they said. Okay? This is really important. Do not focus your paragraphs around the interviewees. Alright? Your paragraphs need to be focused on genres, lexes, or goals. Okay? Do not focus paragraphs around the people that you are interviewing. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to add that right now so that you will remember this, because students in the past have lost a lot of points for doing this. Alright, and I'm putting it in all caps so that you can see it. In your conclusion, again, you are not just summarizing what you said in the essay, you are addressing what is the importance of this discourse community to you and to the world at large. Why is it important to discuss this particular discourse? So just like the literacy narrative, you're answering the how and why of this assignment. The importance of something, justifying why this essay exists and why it is important to study a particular discourse. Alright? So the first 4 items that you see, introduction, methodology, observation, and conclusion, I need to see that in the first draft. Okay? The works cited, I don't need to see until the final draft. But there is a requirement. You need to have a works cited page. Even if you only interview 1 person, you must have a works cited page. Okay? That's all I have to say about the assignment for right now. I'm going to have more to say as you start drafting, as you start thinking about your own discourse communities. This is a difficult assignment, so if you are having trouble understanding it, that is perfectly normal. Many students have a lot of trouble with this paper, especially starting out, but eventually they start to get it. So be patient with me and be patient with yourself. Have a good week.